We are joined now by former Obama National Security Advisor Tom Donilon and Washington Post columnist David Ignatius. David, what's your reaction to what happened in Turkey?
The first thing to say is that watching that video of the bomb going off as the demonstrators are dancing it's just horrifying. It's haunting. The Obama administration's initial sense is that it's too early to assign blame. The Turkish government believes this is the work of ISIS, has not publicly said that, but that's their belief. ISIS was responsible for the last big bombing in Turkey in July, which killed 33 people. The one thing you can say about this is whoever did it was trying to deepen the wedge between the ruling AK party of President Erdogan and the Kurdish activists who are part of Turkish politics, but are also key U.S. allies in the fight against ISIS inside Syria and Iraq. So, this was an attempt to create division, and it may well do just that.
Yeah. What are the repercussions, do you think, Tom?
Well, I think that this is the next nation in the region under great pressure right now. I think we're entering into a period of significant instability for Turkey. It comes from a lot of different sources coming at the same time. There's a renewed battle going on between the Turkish government and Kurdish separatist forces. We had a peace process for a while that's fallen apart. There's a real direct challenge from ISIS now, after Turkey's now entered into the fight against ISIS. There's real political instability in the country right now, and division leading up to these elections in November. Erdogan lost his majority last June and called snap elections in November. There's an economic slowdown, and the UN has registered 1.9 million refugees from Syria. So President Erdogan has his work cut out for him, and I think the country's under significant pressure.
Let me ask you about Syria. The train and equip program from this administration is basically now over. It's judged to be a failure. What happened?
Well, I think we need to look very hard at what happened, and I think that the policy needs a refocus and needs to be re-energized across a number of dimensions. But this capacity building issue is a broader issue for the United States. How do we provide the help to countries to be able to do these projects on their own? And this was obviously a serious failure. Re-energize and refocus, though, I think we need to put together a serious campaign in the north against the ISIS so-called capital of Raqqa. I think we need to look at the safe haven issue. We need a re-energized and more effective air campaign. We need to cut off financing. There's a lot of things that need to have happen here, but this is a serious failure.
David, is this a failure that could have been foreseen? Training and equipping didn't work exactly very well in Iraq in some ways. In certain, also, if it had been started earlier when somebody like Secretary Clinton had pushed for it, would that have made more sense? What do you make of this?
I think the administration has got to face up to the reality that this is an intelligence and policy formulation disaster. This has been coming at us in slow motion since ISIS broke out in Iraq. That was over a year ago. Our Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, said the administration underestimated the threat posed by these people. A year later, they rolled through Ramadi in Iraq. Same thing, underestimated. We've had a program to train and equip Syrian rebels that ended up being a catastrophe. Why didn't we see that coming? So President Obama this week hit the reset button. Okay, we're going to stop doing the things that don't work. We're going to try to do more of the things that do work. Okay, fine, but you do need to look at why these mistakes kept happening the last 2 and 3 years before you're going to be able to get the policy right. And that's what I hope the White House will face up to. Why is this going wrong?
Another apparent policy, or intelligence failure is that the Russians are now much more heavily involved in Syria than, was it a policy failure? I'm sorry, I should ask it as an intelligence failure that the U.S. missed that the Russians would be actively militarily engaged in Syria.
I don't know if it's an intelligence failure. I do think Russian intentions are quite clear, though. And the Russian intention in Syria is to prop up the Assad regime, to put Russia in a place to be able to be a dominant force with respect to whatever political settlement emerges here. This is not Russia joining some anti-ISIS coalition, anti-terror coalition. This is all about Russian interests.
Which is what they say it is out loud, right?
And it's just, but look at the geography of the strikes and look at the weaponry. The geography is against almost all, not ISIS targets, but opposition to Assad. And the weaponry has a lot more to do with kind of precluding Western options. Now, the Russians may live to regret this, but it is a more complicated and a more dangerous situation. You have U.S. and Russian military assets operating in military campaigns in very close proximity. That's exceedingly dangerous. And I think we'll see, Russian approach to these kinds of things is not subtle. If you look at what their approach was, David will remember this very clearly in Chechnya, for example. I think that's to give you a picture of what you could see in terms of a Russian effort here.
David, what do you make? Two questions on intelligence, but then also President Obama said, well, this is a sign of weakness for Vladimir Putin. His economy has collapsed. He's got to prop up his one state in the region. What do you make of that argument?
First, I think the intelligence was a problem. We didn't see the dimensions of the Russian military intervention in Syria coming. The president does see this as a sign of Putin's weakness. And it's true that Putin is playing a weak hand. His key client, Bashar al-Assad, is just hanging by a thread. And that is the major reason I think the Russians have come in. What the administration has to see is that Putin now in Syria, as in Ukraine, is playing a weak hand brilliantly, forcefully. And this is, to me, an illustration as the U.S. steps back in these areas of conflict, others step forward. And they begin to do things. They begin to create facts on the ground, as Russia is now doing with its military, that change the situation for us. So, yes, Putin is weak, as the president says, but the U.S. response, I would say, is weaker still.
Dan, I've got to interrupt you. I'm sorry, we're out of time. Tom, thanks so much. Thank you both. We'll be back in a moment.